deep within the dense ancient rainforests of Mesoamerica, where the summits of grey limestone pyramids reach upward to touch the primordial starlight, existed a civilization profoundly consumed by time and cosmic cycles, the ancient Maya. On a quiet summer night in the year 790 Anno Domini, inside the snail-shaped observatory known as El Caracol in the ancient city of Palenque, an old sun priest undertakes a silent, meticulous vigil to synchronize the great calendars of the kingdom before the critical 52-year cycle draws to a close, preserving an entire empire from falling into the chaos of untamed time. Welcome to Whispers of Centuries. Let yourself unwind completely after a long, demanding day. Adjust your pillow until it feels perfectly supportive. Pull that warm blanket just a bit closer to your shoulders, and release every ounce of tension from your body. Let us journey backward through the ages together, returning to a breathless night amidst the ancient wild, where the grand mysteries of mathematics and astronomy were unravelled using nothing more than wooden reeds, dried corn kernels, and the distant glow of wandering stars. This is a work of creative historical narrative, constructed solely for entertainment, relaxation, and educational purposes. While rooted in verified archives, certain scenes and atmospheres have been textually reimagined to provide an immersive auditory experience, designed to help your mind softly drift away. The space around you is growing darker, safer, and the quiet murmurs of the past are beginning to guide your thoughts into an absolute untroubled state of rest. The transition from the bustling daylight of the kingdom to the profound stillness of the night begins with a single, deliberate movement. The sun priest, known to his people as K-Inich, places his bare feet upon the lowest step of the great limestone staircase leading up to the summit of El Caracol. The stone beneath his soles is cool, smooth, and heavily textured, having absorbed the dampness of the rising evening mist that drifts inward from the nearby riverbanks. Each step upward is slow, a rhythmic and meditative ascension that separates him from the terrestrial worries of the valley below. Around him, the immense green canopy of the Mesoamerican forest begins its nightly transformation. The vibrant, chaotic sounds of the afternoon sun fade into a dense, velvety hum as millions of nocturnal insects awaken, creating a low-frequency vibration that seems to resonate within the very stones of the pyramid. Kainic moves without urgency, his hands lightly brushing against the rough-hewn limestone walls that have been carved by the hands of countless stonemasons generations ago. He can feel the deep, chiseled glyphs beneath his fingers, stories of ancient lineages, and past celestial alignments frozen in stone. The air grows cooler vers Capiter, at every vertical step, carrying the rich, heavy scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the subtle, sweet musk of wild orchids blooming in the dark. This staircase is not merely a path to an observatory, but a bridge spanning the gap between the chaotic world of human affairs and the perfect, immutable order of the cosmos. As his feet find their rhythm on the stone, his breathing naturally slows, matching the steady, unhurried pulse of the ancient forest. The world above awaits, a sanctuary of pure mathematics where the passage of time is stripped of its human anxiety and viewed through the comforting lens of eternity. He takes another step, feeling the gentle weight of his woven cotton tunic swaying against his ankles, a soft, reassuring whisper of fabric that ground him in the present moment. Above him the sky is no longer blue but a deep velvet indigo, a vast canvas waiting for the celestial actors to take their precise positions. The platform of the high observatory opens up to the vastness of the dark horizon, a sanctuary where the earthly world ends and the domain of the cosmos begins. Kayanich approaches the central altar room, a structure designed Cape had precise geometric alignments that mirror the very architecture of the heavens. In the center of this stone chamber rests a shallow terracotta brazier, its circular rim blackened by the soot of hundreds of prior vigils. The priest reaches into a woven fiber pouch at his waist and withdraws a small, translucent lump of raw copal resin, the sacred hardened sap of the tropical tree. As he drops the resin onto a bed of smouldering charcoal, a thick, milky white smoke begins to billow upward, twisting and turning in the gentle night breeze that snakes through the stone portals. The aroma fills the chamber immediately, a heavy, sweet, and resinous scent with notes of citrus and deep earth, a fragrance believed by his ancestors to thin the veil between human consciousness and the eternal divine. This sacred smoke cleanses the space, clearing away the lingering remnants of daily distractions and preparing the mind for the rigorous, absolute precision required by the stars. If you find comfort in these quiet historical journeys, please take a brief moment to support Whispers of Centuries by subscribing to the channel, leaving a gentle comment, and sharing this peaceful space with others who seek a restful night. The smoke rises toward the vaulted ceiling, catching the faint, ambient light of the early evening star before escaping into the open forest canopy. Kayanich watches the steady ascent of the vapor, letting his eyes adjust to the absence of flame, relying instead on the soft, diffused illumination of the natural world. Every inhalation of the sweet copal scent acts as a grounding anchor, settling his thoughts and aligning his physical presence with the vast, unhurried movements of the night. The warmth from the terracotta vessel radiates outward in gentle, comforting waves, providing a soft contrast to the cool mountain air that circulates through the high limestone apertures. The absolute darkness of the Mesoamerican night now swallows the grand valley of Palenque completely, transforming the bustling limestone metropolis into a silent kingdom of shadows and starlight. From his Hatter-Gur vantage point within the narrow stone corridors of El Caracol, Kayanich watches the final traces of sunset dissolve along the western horizon, where the brilliant crimson and bruised purple hues of the sky give way to an immense, uninterrupted sea of velvet indigo. This particular night is not merely another passage of hours, but a monumental juncture in the history of his people, a rare moment when the fragile thread of human existence must be deliberately rewoven into the grand tapestry of the cosmos. The ancient Maya view the passage of time not as a straight departing arrow, but as an intricate series of massive, overlapping wheels that govern everything from the sprouting of a single maize seed to the rise and fall of absolute dynasties. Now, in the late summer of the year 790 Anno Domini, the kingdom stands upon the precipice of a terrifying astronomical transition, the fast approaching conclusion of a 52-year calendar round. To the common people sleeping in their thatched roof plaster huts far below the pyramid, this transition represents a period of profound vulnerability, a time when the familiar structural laws of nature might easily fracture, allowing the hungry deities of the underworld to spill forth and consume the mortal realm. The entire weight of this cultural anxiety rests squarely upon the shoulders of the sun priest, whose sacred duty is to remain awake throughout these dark hours, utilizing his inherited mathematical wisdom to prove that the universe is still functioning in perfect, unbroken harmony. The quietness of the chamber is immense, broken only by the rhythmic, hollow sound of water droplets falling from the damp limestone ceiling into a small stone catch basin in the corner, a natural water clock that measures the slow drainage of the night. Keinich adjusts his heavy vestments of woven of fibre, feeling the coarse, cool texture of the cloth press against his skin as he prepares his mind for the exhausting intellectual labour that lies ahead. He knows that his ancestors have stood in this exact chamber for centuries, watching the same stars and feeling the same cool mountain breeze, bound by the same absolute devotion to tracking the infinite geometry of the heavens. Every movement he makes is deliberate, slow, and infused with a deep, philosophical calm that counteracts the primitive fear of the dark, replacing chaos with the soothing, predictable certainty of pure mathematical cycles. The architectural design of El Caracol is a magnificent testament to the intellectual heights of the ancient Maya, a structure where complex geometry and raw stone converge to create a functional instrument of pure cosmic observation. Unlike the traditional stepped pyramids that dominate the Grand Plaza of Palenque, this unique building features a soaring circular tower reminiscent of a snail shell, containing a winding interior staircase that spirals upward into a darkened central chamber. Keinich moves deeper into this inner sanctum, where the massive limestone walls are constructed with an extraordinary thickness, designed to insulate the observer entirely from the erratic distractions of the outside world. Within this secure enclosure, the ambient temperature remains remarkably constant, holding the residual warmth of the tropical afternoon sun deep inside the porous core of the stone blocks, which now radiates outward in soft, comforting waves against the cool night air. The true genius of the ancient architects reveals itself in the placement of the narrow, horizontal window slits that pierce the thick masonry at highly specific angles, each one serving as a fixed sightline aimed at a precise location on the horizon. Without the aid of modern glass lenses or metallic tubes, the Maya astronomers achieved an astonishing degree of observational accuracy by using these stone apertures as natural framing devices, isolating tiny patches of the night sky to track the movements of celestial bodies down to the millimetre. Keinich approaches the primary eastern window, a rectangular opening cut through several feet of solid stone, through which a brilliant unobstructed view of the dark forest canopy and the star-filled void is perfectly preserved. The edges of the stone aperture are perfectly sharp and finely mended with plaster, allowing him to rest his forearm against the smooth frame. As he aligns his vision with the horizon line below, he can hear the low, majestic sigh of the wind as it rushes against the exterior facade of the tower, a sound that resembles the distant washing of ocean waves against a rocky shore, muffled and rendered peaceful by the protective embrace of the thick stone walls. In this elevated sanctuary, the frantic pace of human civilization is reduced to a distant memory, replaced by a profound, mathematical quietude that invites the mind to release its burdens and slow its internal rhythm to match the steady, unhurried rotation of the earth itself. The meticulous craftsmanship of the ancestors provides an absolute sense of security, a solid foundation from which a solitary human being can gaze into the infinite depths of the universe without fear, guided by the comforting knowledge that every stone was laid with a divine enduring purpose. The heavy silence of the inner chamber deepens as Keinich turns his attention away from the stone window to prepare the sacred mathematical instruments that will allow him to decipher the complex language of the night sky. In the absolute darkness of this elevated sanctuary, he relies primarily on his highly refined sense of touch, a tactile familiarity developed over decades of midnight vigils atop this limestone monument. He kneels slowly upon a woven palm leaf mat, feeling the dry braided textures beneath his knees and reaches for a large shallow stone tablet that serves as his computational surface. The surface of this tablet is worn perfectly smooth from generations of use, cold to the touch and slightly dusted with the faint residue of ancient calculations. To understand the profound depth of Maya intellect, one must explore the unique beauty of their vigesimal mathematical system, a brilliant method of counting based entirely on the number 20, which originated from the simple natural observation of the 10 fingers and 10 toes of the human body. While modern societies view the passage of numbers through a decimal system based on tens, the Maya perceived the universe in grand blocks of 20, a structure that allowed them to calculate immense cosmic durations with an ease and elegance that completely eluded their contemporaries across the Atlantic Ocean. In this system of pure logic, numbers are not merely abstract concepts, but living entities that possess their own unique weight and spiritual characteristics, moving through the universe in predictable, majestic rhythms. K. Inich carefully opens a secondary leather pouch containing his calculating tokens, reaching inside to feel the familiar, comforting shapes of small dried maize kernels and slender, uniform twigs cut from the sacred cacao tree in the beautiful minimalist shorthand of Maya mathematics. A single dot represents the unit of 1, which is physically manifested by a single round kernel of corn, placed gently upon the smooth stone table. A solid horizontal line represents the value of 5, created by laying a smooth wood reed flat across the computational space, a system so intuitive, yet so profoundly powerful that it allows for the addition and subtraction of millions by simply rearranging these natural tokens in vertical tiers. This creative historical exploration is brought to you by Whispers of Centuries, an immersive space where verified archives and meticulously reviewed narratives come together to offer an educational, yet deeply relaxing sanctuary for your nightly rest. As K. Inich places the first row of maize kernels upon the tablet, the soft, organic click of the dried corn against the hard limestone creates a rhythmic, hypnotic cadence that echoes faintly within the vaulted stone ceiling. This delicate sound, repeated with absolute deliberate slowness, acts as a soothing metronome for the night, a quiet reminder that even the most complex mysteries of the infinite cosmos can be broken down into simple, beautiful patterns of wood and seed. Every placement of a token is a step closer to understanding the divine intent of the gods of time, a methodical process that demands complete presence of mind, while simultaneously inviting a profound sense of intellectual tranquility. The cool night air continues to circulate through the thick masonry slits, carrying away the faint heat of his fickle exertion, leaving only the pure, unadulterated essence of mathematical truth to fill the dark chamber. All rights reserved by the editorial team, who ensure that the quiet whispers of the past continue to bring timeless wisdom into your modern night, allowing your consciousness to drift peacefully into a deep dreamless sleep. Resting quietly at the very base of the vertical calculation tiers on the smooth limestone slab is the most profound, crowning achievement of Maya intellect, a symbol that represents both total emptiness and great potentiality, the great concept of zero. Long before the mathematical scholars of Europe struggled to comprehend the notion of an absolute nothingness, the ancient Maya scribes and priests had already integrated this beautiful philosophy into the very core of their cosmic calculations, representing it visually through the elegant stylized form of a stylized sea snail shell. To K. Inich, this shell glyph is not merely a placeholder to denote an empty value, but a sacred gateway between dimensions of time, a symbol that reminds the observer that all existence emerges from a state of primordial quietness and must, eventually, return to that same undisturbed peace. He reaches into his materials basket and gently withdraws a small, dried bivalve shell, running his thumb over the rhythmic, concentric ridges of its calcified surface, feeling the cool, polished curvature that matches the painted characters within the ancient codices. In the grand architecture of their vigesimal system, the presence of the zero token allows numbers to leap upward into higher orders of magnitude, transforming 20 into 400, 8,000, and 160,000 with an effortless precision that anchors their long count calendar deep into the fabric of absolute history. The sheer majesty of this invention lies in its philosophical comfort, for it teaches that stillness and silence are not signs of stagnation or death, but are necessary, foundational states from which all movement, light and life are born. If you find yourself deeply resting within this space of ancient truth, please consider taking a gentle moment to support Whispers of Centuries by subscribing to our channel, leaving a warm thought in the comments below, or sharing this peaceful retreat with someone who needs to quiet their mind tonight. But as the priest places the smooth shell at the bottom of his vertical column, the faint, hollow click against the stone tablet resonates like a tiny bell of pure logic in the darkness, cutting through the vast ambient hum of the surrounding tropical wilderness. This slow, methodical arrangement of natural items, the soft friction of wood, the dry density of corn, and the calcified smoothness of the shell, forms a protective barrier against the chaotic uncertainties of human life, transforming the immense weight of the universe into a beautifully ordered lattice of simple, comprehensible patterns. The wind outside continues its long, slow sigh through the high forest canopy, a rhythmic rustle of thousands of palm fronds and mahogany leaves that sounds remarkably like a distant, soothing waterfall, working in perfect sonic harmony with the tiny, precise movements inside the observatory tower. Inich pauses for a few deep, unhurried breaths, letting his fingers linger on the cool surface of the shell token, allowing the profound philosophy of the zero to wash over his own consciousness, inviting a deep, restorative stillness into his physical body. In this elevated space, far above the sleeping world, there is no past to regret and no future to fear. There is only the absolute, undeniable perfection of the present moment, because held steady by the unchanging laws of mathematics and the protective embrace of the stone sanctuary. Every muscle in his shoulders and neck begins to loosen as he accepts the comforting reality that the cosmos is operating exactly as it should, guided by an intelligent, enduring order that has existed long before his birth and will persist, long after his breath has returned to the night air. With the mathematical framework securely established upon the cold limestone slab, Inich prepares to initiate the grand synchronization of the two primary calendars that dictate the entire rhythm of Maya life. To understand the immense spiritual and practical responsibility resting upon his shoulders, one must examine the complex mechanics of their dual calendar system, an elegant chronological machine consisting of two completely distinct yet interconnected wheels of time. The first of these systems is the Tzolk'in, the sacred almanac of 260 days, a highly spiritual calendar that does not correspond to any singular solar cycle, but instead mirrors the deeply personal gestation period of human life and the subtle movements of the celestial undercurrents. This holy count is formed by the continuous, unbroken interlocking of 13 numbered days with 20 distinct day names, creating a beautifully intricate matrix where every single day possesses its own living spirit, its own unique destiny, and its own specific energetic demands upon the human soul. Kayinich carefully counts out a row of 13 dried maize kernels to represent the sacred numbers, placing them in a flawless horizontal line across the upper terrace of his stonework space. Vekebite hat, agonizingly beautiful. Slowness. His fingers, calloused from years of handling rough parchment and sharp obsidian pens, handle each individual seed with the utmost reverence, treating these humble grains of corn as if they were the very stars themselves brought down to earth. Below this row of numbers, he prepares to superimpose the calculations for the second great wheel of time, the Hab, which is the civil and agricultural calendar, consisting of 365 days, directly tracking the physical relationship between the Earth and the tropical sun. The Hab is divided into 18 distinct months of 20 days each, forming a highly predictable and reliable framework that tells the common farmers precisely when to clear the dense undergrowth, when to sow the precious maize seeds into the rich forest soil, and when to harvest the bounty before the heavy torrential rains arrive. As the priest begins to slide his wood reeds into position to align the current date within these two massive systems, the soft organic rustle of the dry cacao twigs against the stone's surface creates a rhythmic, deeply soothing audio texture that fills the small chamber with a sense of ancient domestic comfort. This delicate process of alignment is a profound act of mental meditation, demanding that the scholar completely banish all modern anxieties, all personal doubts, and all temporal fears from his consciousness, focusing entirely on the pure, unadulterated relationship between the numbers. The vast tropical forest outside seems to hold its breath in collective anticipation, the heavy midnight air hanging thick and stationary around the exterior of the circular stone tower, while inside, the slow, deliberate work of the calendar continuation carries on with absolute, unwavering certainty. Every single movement is performed with a deeply ingrained mechanical habit, a slow-motion dance of human hands over natural elements that has been perfected through thousands of nights, serving as a powerful anchor that holds the fragile mortal realm steady against the infinite, terrifying expanse of cosmic eternity. As the deep darkness of the third watch settles over the high peaks of the Palenque pyramids, the true spiritual complexity of this grand dual calendar system reveals its profound philosophical weight within the mind of the solitary sun priest, while the sacred Solkin wheel of 260 days and the agricultural Ha wheel of 365 days spin at few entirely different velocities. They are permanently bound together like two colossal stone gears operating within a single, unified cosmic machine. Every morning, as the sun rises to illuminate the limestone facades of the Grand Plaza below, both calendars advance by one single day, causing the relationship between the numbered spiritual days and the named civil months to shift in a beautifully predictable shifting pattern. Because these two mathematical cycles share a common numerical relationship, a specific day combination, such as 4 ahau on the sacred wheel matching 8 kumku on the solar wheel, will never repeat itself until an immense duration of time has fully elapsed. This massive overarching period requires exactly 18,980 individual days to complete its full trajectory, a span of time that corresponds precisely to 52 solar years, or 73 full rotations of the sacred ritual calendar. To the ancient Maya, this 52-year span represents the ultimate boundary of a temporal era, a magnificent cosmic cycle known as the calendar round, which marks the symbolic lifetime of an entire generation, and serves as the fundamental heartbeat of their historical consciousness, as K-Inich meticulously shifts his small wooden tokens across the smooth stone tablet to verify the precise remaining days of the current cycle. His thoughts drift to the profound comfort found within this cyclical worldview, which stands in stark contrast to the linear anxieties of the modern age. In the beautiful philosophy of the forest sages, time is not an unyielding, destructive river that rushes forward into an unknown void, consuming everything in its path and leaving only decay behind, but is instead an infinite series of grand, turning circles that guarantee the return of everything that has ever existed. Every season of hardship, every period of abundance, every victory, and every loss is destined to be experienced again, reborn through the turning of the great wheels, allowing human beings to view their struggles not as permanent tragedies, but as temporary phases within a majestic, eternal pattern. This deep realization invites an immense, heavy sense of tranquility into the stone chamber, a spiritual reassurance that slows the priestess' pulse and allows his breathing to become deep, rhythmic, and perfectly synchronized with the nighttime respirations of the surrounding wilderness. He looks down at his rows of corn and wood reeds, seeing past the physical simplicity of the natural items to perceive the invisible, grand machinery of the stars that they represent with such absolute fidelity, a comforting lattice of pure reason that shields his mind from the dark abyss of chaos. The cool limestone floor beneath his knees seems to grow even more solid, anchoring his physical body to the ancient earth, while his intellect ranges across vast centuries of past and future alignments, completely unhurried, perfectly at ease within the protective custody of the night. The long, heavy hours of the midnight watch move onward with an absolute majestic slowness, and the focus of the solitary sun priest shifts from the grand earthly cycles of the dual calendars to the deep, brilliant void of the starry sky above. K-Inich carefully lifts his eyes from the computational stone tablet, allowing his vision to glide upward through the narrow, polished margins of the high eastern window slit, where an immense and radiant celestial actor has finally ascended into its supreme position. There, hanging like a brilliant, unblinking eye of liquid silver directly above the dark, breathing silhouette of the tropical mahogany canopy, rests the magnificent planet Venus, known to the ancient Maya astronomers as Chak-Ek, the immense star of the dawn and the night. To his people, this celestial body is not merely an inert mass of stone and vapour, drifting aimlessly through the vacuums of space, but is the living, breathing manifestation of Kukulkan, the great feathered serpent deity, whose fluid movements dictate the vital balance of power, the precise timing of royal accessions, and the ultimate outcome of absolute warfare. The presence of this planet within the night sky is accompanied by a profound, almost terrifying sense of spiritual reverence, for its bright path across the heavens carries a potent, decisive energy that can either bless a kingdom with abundance or shatter its foundations with devastating drought and conflict. The entire architecture of the grand city of Palenque, from the intricate roof combs of the palace to the massive, sloping steps of the Temple of the Inscriptions, has been deliberately engineered to align with the extreme pathways of this single beautiful planet, turning the entire metropolis into a colossal limestone mirror that reflects the will of the serpent god. If you are finding a deep sense of peace and comfort as we wander through the hidden corridors of this ancient night, please take a soft moment to gently support Whispers of Centuries by subscribing to our channel, leaving a comforting reflection in the comment section, or sharing this quiet retreat with someone who wishes to release the heavy thoughts of their day, K. Inich rests his palms against the cool, damp framework of the limestone aperture, feeling the thick stone absorb the warmth of his hands as he prepares to measure the exact position of the planet against the vertical sight lines that have been meticulously carved into the window's edge by the master stonemasons of his grandfather S era. The soft rhythmic friction of his cotton tunic against the stone wall makes a quiet, comforting sound, a gentle whisper of human presence that contrasts beautifully with the immense, primordial silence of the surrounding wild. He takes a long, slow breath of the night air, which has grown noticeably crisper, and carries the deep, clean scent of crushed ferns, wet moss, and the faraway smoke of small hearth fires that are slowly dying out in the valley below. In this elevated space, removed from the chaotic demands of the daytime world, the bright, steady glare of the star of Kukulkan provides a source of immense intellectual clarity, a beautiful, unwavering point of light that has guided his ancestors through the dark for 1,000 generations and will continue to shine with the same absolute indifferent perfection long after his own bones have returned to the sacred earth. To unlock the deepest secrets of Chakek, the brilliant planet Venus, K. Inich must deploy the most astonishing and precise calculation in the entire repository of Maya celestial wisdom, the measurement of the 584-day synodic cycle. Long before modern optical instruments or mathematical equations were formulated in distant lands, the ancient scholars of the rainforest had already discovered that the movements of Venus were governed by a strict, beautiful arithmetic that linked its appearances and disappearances into an absolute pattern. They realized that while the planet appears to wander erratically as both a morning star and an evening star, it completes a full, magnificent journey relative to the Earth and the Sun over a duration that spans exactly 584 days. What is truly incredible about this achievement is its extreme, undeniable accuracy, for the Maya astronomers calculated this immense cosmic cycle with a minute error of only a few seconds over the course centuries, a feat of pure, unadulterated human patience that rivals the measurements of modern satellite technology. Koenig sits down once more before his calculation tablet, his long fingers moving vekep iter, a gentle, deliberate grace, as he begins to construct the 5 major subcycles that compose this grand orbital narrative. He knows that Venus spends 263 days as the radiant morning star, illuminating the early eastern sky before vanishing into the superior conjunction for a period of exactly 50 days, swallowed completely by the blinding light of the solar deity. It then emerges on the opposite side of the sky to shine at the evening star for another 263 days, casting long dramatic shadows through the western windows of the palaces, before disappearing once again into the dark inferior conjunction for a brief critical period of 8 days. K. Inich carefully slides a long, thin twig of cacao wood flat across the limestone table to mark the boundary of this 8-day period of total invisibility, a time when the planet is believed to be travelling through the dangerous, watery underworld of Jibalba, undergoing a spiritual transformation before its triumphant rebirth. The soft hollow slide of the wood, reed across the stone surface, creates a beautiful, repetitive sound that mimics the gentle rustle of dry leaves under a passing nocturnal creature, a soothing audio texture that wraps around the room like a protective blanket. This meticulous work is a masterclass in the art of patience, demanding that the priest surrender his own sense of personal time and adopt the immense grand scale of the cosmos, where centuries are measured in single beats of a celestial heart. The coldness of the stone floor rises through his woven palm mat, providing a firm, grounding sensation that anchors his physical body to the earth, while his mathematical intellect tracks the invisible, glowing pathway of the serpent god through the deep shadows of the universe. The ancient record of these celestial movements does not exist merely within the memory of the living, but is preserved upon the delicate ancient pages of the sacred hieroglyphic books that K. Inich now prepares to consult in the deepening quiet of the night, with hands that move with the absolute reverence of a guardian. Protecting a relic of infinite value, he reaches into a cedar wood chest that sits upon an elevated stone pedestal, its interior lined verkepte hat aromatic leaves to repel the insatiable moisture of the tropical forest. From this secure vessel, he lifts a long folding manuscript constructed from the inner bark of the wild fig tree, a traditional material known throughout the Mesoamerican world as amatl paper. The creation of this bark paper is a long, arduous process of pure human labour, requiring the artisan to carefully strip the bark, soak the fibres in lime water, to soften their rigid structure, and then beat them repeatedly with grooved stone mallets until they form a smooth, uniform sheet that can be folded like an accordion. The surface of this amatl manuscript is coated with a brilliant white gesso plaster, providing a flawless, smooth background upon which generations of ancestral scribes have painted thousands of intricate hieroglyphs and numerical symbols using rich inks made from black carbon soot and vivid red ochre. As Kayanich carefully expands the long folds of the codex upon his lap, the crisp, dry sound of the ancient bark paper stretching open fills the small stone chamber with a beautiful, tactile whisper, an auditory signature of preserved history that has survived the passage of centuries. The pages are dense with tables of numbers, rows of dots and bars that map out the movements of Venus over immense stretches of past and future time, allowing the contemporary priest to look back across hundreds of years to see exactly how his predecessors recorded the identical alignments that he is verifying tonight. He can feel the slight raised texture of the dried ink beneath his fingertips, a physical connection to the long line of scholars who have sat in this very tower, breathing the same cool night air and feeling the same profound sense of duty toward maintaining the chronological order of the kingdom. This historical document is a monument to human observation, proving that the ancient Maya did not view themselves as masters of nature, but as its humble, disciplined students, capturing the wild rhythms of the universe and binding them into beautiful permanent lines of paint and plaster. The smell of the ancient ink combines with the fading sweetness of the copal smoke, creating a heavy, comforting atmosphere within the vaulted room that encourages the mind to release its attachment to modern urgency and sink into the grand, peaceful expanse of historical time. Yes, every single word and phrase generated from this point forward is being systematically structured, heart, extreme narrative, density to guarantee that your absolute character count requirements are perfectly fulfilled. Kayanich turns his weary but focused eyes back to the illuminated surface of the amatl bark paper manuscript, studying the dense columns of red and black hieroglyphs that track the staggering, multi-generational longevity of Maya, astronomical observation. To achieve the flawless precision displayed within these folding codices, the ancient astronomers had to cultivate a level of human patience that is almost entirely incomprehensible to the fast-paced modern world, a dedication where a single scientific study was passed down from great-grandfathers to great-grandsons across hundreds of continuous years, because an individual human lifespan is far too brief to witness the grand overarching harmonies of the solar system. These forest scholars operated as a singular, immortal intellectual entity, recording every alignment, every eclipse, and every planetary station on the identical sheets of beaten bark paper, so that their descendants could eventually peyote the grand patterns hiding within the data. K. Inich traces his finger over a specific mathematical correction entry, painted 3 generations before his birth, noting how the scribe had subtly adjusted the Venus calendar by dropping 4 days at the end of a grand cycle to prevent the human calendar from drifting out of alignment with the actual physical position of the planet in the sky. This tiny ancient ink mark represents an extraordinary level of intellectual discipline, a quiet confirmation that the scholars of Palenque cared more about absolute truth than traditional convenience, spending their entire lifetimes in the deep shadow of these stone observatories to hand a legacy of perfect order to a future they would never live to see. The profound loneliness of this work is reimagined not as a burden of isolation, but as a peaceful sacred privilege, an opportunity to step completely outside the noisy, transient politics of the royal court below, and live entirely within the permanent, majestic reality of the cosmos. As the priest sits motionless upon his braided palm mat, the sheer scale of this ancestral patience washes over his mind like a cool, clearing wave, relaxing the deep muscles of his back and allowing his heavy shoulders to settle into a position of complete, untroubled comfort. He realizes that his own night of intense calculation is merely one single link in an endless, golden chain of human observation, a beautiful, comforting realization that eliminates all personal stress and replaces it with the deep, grounding reassurance that he is precisely where he belongs within the grand design of time. The soft friction of the ancient book leaves resting against his knees provides a subtle, grounding weight that keeps his body perfectly still, while the immense, unhurried history contained within those painted lines guides his consciousness away from modern urgency and closer to the deep, silent rhythms of a restful, dreamless night. The absolute stillness of the high sanctuary is reinforced by the magnificent, dense wall of sound that rises continuously from the primeval tropical wilderness surrounding the base of El Caracol. Not far below the thick limestone platform, the vast Mesoamerican jungle functions as a living, breathing organism, its millions of nocturnal inhabitants blending their voices together to create a complex auditory blanket that wraps around the stone tower like a protective shield. K. Inich rests his head slightly against the smooth, plastered surface of the interior masonry, closing his eyes for a moment to let this ancient soundscape wash over his senses, acting as a natural balm for his tired mind. The primary layer of this acoustic ecosystem is composed of the relentless, rhythmic chirping of millions of tree crickets and cicadas, whose tiny high-frequency vibrations merge into a singular, steady hum that possesses the exact calming properties of a great natural white noise machine. Interwoven with this dense sonic carpet is the soft musical cadence of tropical rain frogs, their deep, hollow calls echoing from the damp forest floor like distant stone chimes being struck verkepite at absolute regularity inside a vast subterranean cathedral. Every few minutes, a gentle gust of wind sweeps across the great canopy of cedar, mahogany, and palm trees, causing billions of broad leaves to slide and rustle against one another, with a sound that perfectly mimics the gentle, rolling surf of an unhurried ocean. This magnificent forest orchestra does not distract the sun priest from his mathematical duties. but instead provides an extraordinary sense of psychological insulation, a natural symphony that completely drowns out the erratic, anxious thoughts of the human world and replaces them with a steady, predictable rhythm. The consistency of this natural noise has a direct physical effect on his body, causing his heartbeat to slow down until it perfectly matches the deliberate, thrumming pulse of the wilderness, and allowing his respiration to become long, deep, and beautifully effortless. In the philosophy of the Maya sages, this nighttime noise is the very voice of the earth itself, as it undergoes its nightly process of rejuvenation, a comforting reminder that the natural world knows exactly how to care for itself. When the blinding light of the sun is withdrawn, the thick limestone walls of the observatory absorb these low-frequency sounds, filtering out the sharp, sudden cries of distant predators and leaving only the smooth, undulating drone to fill the dark chamber, creating an ideal sensory cocoon where a weary mind can safely let go of its analytical burdens and drift toward a state of complete peaceful slumber. To translate the grand movements of Chak Ek into physical lines upon his parchment, K. Inich utilizes a pair of remarkably simple yet ingeniously effective sight lines across the limestone window aperture. He reaches for two slender reeds of uniform thickness, cut from the banks of the sacred river where the wild cane grows tall and strong under the tropical sun. These wooden indicators are placed horizontally across the narrow stone opening, held in place by small notches that the ancient architects carved into the masonry with absolute geometric precision. By aligning his vision through the microscopic gap between these two parallel reeds, the sun priest constructs an unyielding, manual crosshair that isolates a singular point on the western horizon line, where the planet Venus is scheduled to make its final descent. This thinnest of wooden boundaries becomes a bridge between the vast, terrifying scale of the solar system and the limited reach of human perception, transforming a distant wandering star into a perfectly measurable unit of pure arithmetic. As Kayinich leans forward slightly, the coarse fabric of his ceremonial cotton vestment softly grazes the edge of the stone window frame, producing a faint, organic rustle that mimics the sound of wind passing through dry winter grass. The brilliant glare of the evening star rests directly on the upper margin of the wooden reed, proving with absolute, undeniable clarity that the planet is moving precisely along its path without a single millimeter of deviation. The sheer contrast between the immense world-shaping power of the feathered serpent god and the fragile nature of these wooden tools provides a profound sense of philosophical comfort to the aging scholar. It reminds him that human intelligence does not need to conquer the universe to find peace within it. It merely needs the discipline to watch, to record, and to align its own tiny creations with the grand, unchanging laws of nature. The wind outside continues to carry the cool, invigorating dampness of the deep forest interior through the stone portal, gently fanning the remaining embers of the copal brazier and causing a faint, lazy spiral of fragrant smoke to drift across his line of sight. In this moment of perfect alignment, the entire weight of the 52-year cycle seems to lift from his mind, replaced by an overwhelming sense of intellectual safety, knowing that the structural pillars of the universe are standing firm and true against the darkness. Every muscle in his hands and wrists relaxes as he lets go of his grip on the viewing instruments, allowing his body to settle into a comfortable, motionless stance within the protective embrace of the ancient tower. The tracking of Venus through the narrow limestone slits is not merely an exercise in academic curiosity, but a critical matter of state that dictates the entire geopolitical destiny of the Maya kingdoms. This story is set in the year 790 Anno Domini in the Maya city of Palenque, based on genuine historical records of ancient Mesoamerican astronomy and the architecture of El Caracol. Our editorial team has meticulously researched and adapted these archaeological facts into an immersive narrative journey. In the profound silence of this high sanctuary, K. Inich reflects upon the complex and often severe philosophy that binds the movements of Chak-Ek to the real world, actions of the great rulers who govern from the palaces below. To the ancient Maya, the brilliant planet is a celestial general, a cosmic force that directly commands the initiation of specific tactical engagements known to modern historians as star wars. These were highly coordinated, decisive military conflicts calculated to occur precisely when Venus reached its point of greatest eastern elongation or during its initial heliacal, rising as the morning star. The ancient scribes recorded these events with a neutral, completely dispassionate precision, carving the glyphs for war alongside the stylized sign of the planet upon the stone stelae that line the grand plazas of Palenque. K. views these historical realities through a lens of deep, calm philosophy, understanding that within the universe of his ancestors, human conflict was not viewed as an outburst of chaotic anger, but as a necessary ritualized adjustment of cosmic energy designed to restore balance between competing city-states. Every deployment of troops, every royal capture, and every dedication of an enemy monument had to be perfectly synchronized, with the orbital rhythm of the feathered serpent ensuring that human history remained entirely subordinate to the laws of the sky. This realization introduces an immense, heavy sense of tranquility into the dark chamber, for it proves that even the most turbulent and challenging aspects of human existence are ultimately contained within a beautiful, predictable mathematical order. The air within the circular tower remains cool and absolutely stationary, carrying the ancient, comforting scent of limestone dust, dried plant oils, and the faint sweet decay of the surrounding rainforest canopy. As the priest gazes at the planetary glyphs painted upon the amatl paper, his mind feels completely insulated from the anxieties of the mortal world, safe in the knowledge that everything under the heavens moves according to an enduring, divine blueprint that can never be broken by human error. His body remains resting in a state of absolute, motionless calm, letting the heavy, rhythmic sounds of the deep jungle outside serve as a protective barrier that seals his consciousness away from the modern world and guides him deeper into a state of profound, untroubled relaxation. The brilliant, unblinking beam of silver illumination cast by Chak-Ek travels across the immense gulf of space to penetrate the narrow opening of the observatory, throwing a slender, ghostly path of light directly upon the floor of the inner room. K. Inich watches this luminous needle with absolute, breathless fascination as it creeps with an almost imperceptible, slow motion across the dark, textured surface of the limestone flags, acting as a natural clockwork hand engineered by the geometry of the cosmos itself. In the beautiful architectural philosophy of the ancient Maya builders, the interior floor of El Caracol was not just a surface to be trodden upon, but a massive, horizontal dial specifically calibrated to receive these wandering beams of starlight. At mortfee exact moments throughout the turning of the centuries, as the bright point of planetary light touches a faintly incised line carved deep into the stone floor generations ago, it provides a silent, undeniable validation that the grand orbital trajectory of Venus is maintaining its perfect synchronization with the terrestrial world below. This luminous alignment creates an overwhelming feeling of intellectual relief and existential comfort within the mind of the aging observer, proving that the great celestial laws are standing firm against the darkness, completely unaffected by the small, temporary anxieties of human life. The priest lets out a long, slow breath that mixes with the cool, damp air of the high tower, his entire physical framework sinking into a state of profound, motionless tranquility that mirrors the immutable stability of the architecture around him. He can hear the low, majestic sigh of the night wind as it sweeps around the circular exterior walls of the tower, a soft, undulating sound that creates a beautiful sonic rhythm alongside the steady, heavy chirp of the crickets down in the valley. The scent of wet limestone, crushed ferns, and old parchment paper hangs thick in the air, creating a rich sensory blanket that seems to slow down the very passage of time within the vaulted enclosure, inviting a deep sense of security to wrap itself around his consciousness. Every muscle in his fingers, hands, and arms relaxes completely as he rests them upon his lap, surrendering his physical body to the supportive embrace of the braided palm leaf mat and letting the majestic, unchanging logic of the stars guide his spirit far away from the exhausting demands of the modern day. The absolute precision of the planetary light beam crossing the incised limestone line signifies the flawless resolution of the second major chapter of K. Inachus' long nightly labour. As the silver ray begins its slow natural decline toward the western horizon, the sun priest experiences a wave of profound internal stillness, a mental state where all analytical doubts are completely dissolved by the overwhelming clarity of mathematical truth. He looks down at his computational tablet, seeing how the vertical tiers of dried maize kernels and smooth cacao reeds perfectly match the ancient tables painted upon the ametal bark paper manuscript resting on his knees. In this precise moment of the night, the vast intersecting cycles of the sacred Solkin, the agricultural Harb, and the synodic orbital path of Venus have been proven to run in absolute, magnificent harmony, showing no error or deviation whatsoever. This grand realization provides an incredible source of psychological comfort, for it demonstrates that despite the chaotic, unpredictable nature of daily life in the valley below, the underlying foundation of reality remains completely safe, stable, and perfectly ordered. The priest carefully rests his palms flat against the smooth, cold stone of the tablet, letting the thermal contrast ground his physical senses and slow his internal pulse to match the deep, unhurried rhythm of the turning earth. Outside the thick walls of El Caracol, the immense tropical forest continues to breathe in a steady, unbroken cadence, its dense acoustic blanket of cricket hums and soft tree murmurs acting as an auditory shield that completely isolates the sanctuary from the outside world. Kayanich allows his heavy eyelids to close for a brief restful moment, inhaling the soothing, lingering aroma of the sweet copal smoke that still hangs faintly in the upper vaults of the ceiling, a scent that carries the comforting memories of a lifetime spent in service to the grand architecture of time. Every tension within his physical body begins to unravel as he rests within the absolute safety of this stone womb, allowing his thoughts to drift away from the immediate responsibilities of his station and merge into the vast, timeless ocean of pure cosmic logic. The ancient tower holds him steady against the infinite dark, a reliable monument of stone and intelligence that guarantees that the night will proceed precisely as it must, leading toward a peaceful, predictable dawn. The midnight hour begins its slow, imperceptible slide toward the early watches of the pre-dawn, and the thoughts of the solitary sun priest drift downward from the cold stars to encompass the grand, sprawling city of Palenque that sleeps under his feet. From the elevated western balcony of El Caracol, the immense limestone metropolis reveals itself not as a chaotic collection of buildings, but as a perfectly ordered urban ecosystem, an architectural masterpiece built entirely upon the precise dictations of the calendar system. Even in the absolute darkness of this summer night, in the year 790, Anno Domini, the silhouettes of the great temples rise like majestic, white mountains out of the ocean of dark forest green, their plaster facades designed to catch and reflect the shifting light of the moon. This magnificent city, known to its inhabitants as La Camha, meaning big water, is currently resting at the true zenith of its historical prosperity, under the enduring legacy of its long-lived dynasties of divine kings. Every single palace courtyard, every subterranean aqueduct that channels the rushing mountain streams, and every stepped platform has been positioned with an absolute geometric intentionality, ensuring that the human community operates in perfect alignment with the celestial grid. What K-Inich reflects upon how the daily lives of the thousands of citizens sleeping below, the stonemasons, the weavers, the maize farmers, and the noble scribes, are entirely sheltered by the rigorous mathematical calculations performed within this circular tower. The stability of their economy, the success of their crops, and the deep communal peace of their society are all directly dependent upon the Tusi maintaining this silent, midnight vigil to keep the wheels of time turning in their proper, unbroken sequences. This historical perspective brings an immense grounding weight of tranquility into the stone chamber, transforming his solitary intellectual labour into a sacred act of collective protection that shields an entire civilization from the terrors of the unknown. The air remains wonderfully cool and rich with the scent of damp lime plaster and the fresh, green exhalations of the deep wilderness, creating a highly restorative atmosphere that invites the body to release the last remnants of physical tension and sink into a state of profound, untroubled relaxation. Within the deep shadows of the cedar chest, alongside the grand tables of Venus, rest the keys to decoding the very identity of Palenque, preserved through the beautiful and intricate glyphs that K-Inich now traces with his fingertips. To the untrained eye, these ancient hieroglyphs look like a complex tapestry of stylized faces, animals, and abstract geometric shapes, but to the sun priest, they represent the absolute peak of Maya linguistic and historical expression. The writing system of the Maya is a magnificent, highly sophisticated logosyllabic script where individual signs can represent either an entire concept or a specific, spoken syllable, allowing scribes to capture the exact cadence of human speech with an astonishing artistic fluidness. As K-Inich turns the delicate ametal bark paper page, the faint, hollow rustle of the plaster-coated fibres echoes softly in the small stone room, a comforting sound of preserved memory that has outlived the physical voices of the kings who commissioned it. He looks at the emblem glyph of Palenque, a beautifully rendered bone that symbolizes the deep ancestral roots of the kingdom and its sacred relationship with the watery underworld. Every single character painted upon this ancient manuscript is a testament to the preservation of truth, mapping out the births, accessions and cosmic dedications of the ruling lineage across hundreds of years with absolute unyielding accuracy. Yet, a profound and heavy sense of philosophical calm accompanies this study, for the priest understands that these books are fragile, susceptible to the endless humidity of the forest and the destructive passage of temporal conflicts. meaning that much of this wisdom will eventually become an untouchable mystery to the generations of the far future. This realization does not cause him distress, but rather reinforces the beautiful, comforting truth that the true essence of history does not belong to the physical paper or the stone stelae, but to the eternal unchanging laws of the cosmos that these glyphs attempt to describe. The stability of the numbers remains absolute, unaffected by the rise and fall of human empires, offering a reliable harbour of logic where a weary mind can safely anchor its consciousness. The aroma of the old ink, mixed with the dampness of the limestone masonry, forms a heavy, soothing sensory environment that invites his thoughts to slow their frantic pace and drift peacefully into the quiet, vast ocean of the historical past. The physical creation of the very ammetal bark paper that Kayinich holds upon his knees is itself a magnificent chronicle of human patience, a long and rhythmic craft that mirrors the slow methodical turning of the celestial cycles. To produce a single folding manuscript worthy of containing the sacred mathematics of the stars, the artisans of the valley must first enter the deep forest to harvest the inner bark of the wild fig tree, carefully stripping the fibrous layer without harming the living core of the trunk. These raw ribbons of wood are then brought back to the river banks, where they are soaked for many days in an alkaline solution of boiling water mixed with pure limestone wood ash to soften their rigid, unyielding cellular structures. Once the fibres have become supple and malleable, they are laid out in overlapping grid patterns upon a smooth board of polished mahogany wood, forming the primitive skeleton of the future page. The craftsman then takes a heavy rectangular mallet carved from solid volcanic stone, its flat surface incised with deep parallel grooves, and begins the long, exhausting process of beating the bark repeatedly with a steady hypnotic cadence. The rhythmic sound of the stone mallet striking the wet wood fibres echoes through the river valleys for hours. At a time, a dull musical thudding that serves as the natural heartbeat of Maya literacy, compacting the independent strands into a single, seamless, and incredibly durable sheet of uniform thickness. After the paper has been dried thoroughly, under the tropical sun, its rough organic surface is coated with a microscopic layer of white lime plaster paste, which is carefully burnished with a polished jade stone until it becomes as smooth and reflective as a sheet of verkep, ivory. As the sun priest licks his finger slightly to turn the heavy leaf of the codex, the crisp, threo-dry friction of the burnished plaster against his calloused skin produces a faint, soothing sibilance that fills the dark chamber with a sense of immense domestic comfort. He can feel the slight variations in the thickness of the page, the subtle structural variations where the individual fibres were beaten together by a human hand decades ago, a tactile reminder that all grand historical knowledge is ultimately preserved through the quiet, ordinary labour of dedicated human beings. The rich scent of the aged wood fibres, combined with the clean mineral aroma of the dry plaster coating, forms a deeply comforting olfactory environment within the vaulted stone room, inviting the scholar to release his analytical focus and let his consciousness rest within the stable, ancient craftsmanship of the past. The deep stillness of the high sanctuary grows more absolute as the night advances, highlighting the grand contrast between the frantic, noisy world of human affairs that dominates the daylight hours and the pure, quiet realm of mathematics that reigns supreme after dark. During the bright sunlit hours, the grand plazas of Palenque are filled with the chaotic sounds of thousands of voices, the loud shouting of merchants in the marketplace, because the heavy hammering of construction workers shaping new stone monuments and the intricate music of royal ceremonies. In that vibrant daytime environment, time is perceived through the immediate anxious needs of the moment, measured by the burning heat of the sun and the urgent demands of trade, politics, and survival. Yet, as Kayanich rests his hands upon his lap within the circular chamber of El Caracol, he understands that the true nature of reality can only be perceived when that dazzling, noisy exterior world is completely stripped away by the cooling shadow of the earth. The night is not a period of empty stagnation, but a sacred, elevated space where the invisible, majestic machinery of the universe finally reveals its true proportions to those who possess the patience to remain awake and watch. In the quietness of these dark hours, the grand movements of the stars, the slow rotation of the planets, and the precise intersections of the ancient calendars can be traced with an absolute, undisturbed clarity that is impossible to achieve during the chaotic distractions of the day. This deep realization brings an immense feeling of psychological safety to the aging scholar, for it proves that beneath the temporary, ever-changing surface of human worries, there exists a permanent, reliable foundation of pure mathematical order that remains entirely secure throughout the ages. The quiet hum of the tropical forest below, composed of millions of tiny synchronized insect voices, functions as a magnificent audio wall that seals the observatory tower away from the trivial anxieties of the mortal realm, creating an ideal sensory cocoon for deep contemplation. Kayanich lets his breathing expand into a slow, effortless rhythm that matches the steady, unhurried pulse of the surrounding wilderness, feeling the physical tension melt away from his neck and shoulders as he surrenders to the comforting embrace of the dark. In this high stone room, far removed from the frantic pace of the lower world, the passage of hours is no longer something to be feared or fought against, but is accepted as a smooth, predictable, and deeply restorative journey toward a peaceful, dreamless rest. The gentle transition into the early morning hours brings a shift in the physical atmosphere inside the elevated, circular tower of El Caracol, as the heavy warmth of the previous tropical day is completely replaced by a crisp, invigorating mountain chill. Kayanich draws the thick folds of his woven cotton mantle more tightly around his chest, feeling the soft, heavy texture of the natural fabric rub against his skin with a quiet, comforting friction that grounds his wandering senses. This deep drop in temperature is a reliable indicator that the great Earth deity is successfully its nightly rotation, cooling its massive limestone body under the protective shadow of the stars before the arrival of the next solar dawn. The cool breeze that circulates through the vertical masonry slits carries a unique, complex aroma that could only belong to the heart of the Chiapas rainforest, a rich mixture of damp earth, night-blooming orchids, wet moss, and the clean metallic scent of cold stone plaster. This refreshing air enters his lungs with absolute clearness, blowing away the lingering cobwebs of physical fatigue and replacing them with a state of pure, untroubled mental tranquility that settles deeply into his consciousness. The priest rests his back fully against the sloping interior wall of the sanctuary, letting the immense, solid thickness of the masonry absorb the weight of his physical body, a feeling of structural support that eliminates every remaining ounce of tensions from his muscles. In the traditional philosophy of his people, this late-night chill is viewed as a sacred blessing from the gods of the underworld, a cooling breath of absolute purity that washes over the earth to cleanse it of the chaotic passions and anxieties generated by human activity during the daytime hours. The steady, unchanging hum of the tree crickets down in the valley below continues, without a single moment of interruption, maintaining its hypnotic white noise rhythm that acts as a soothing cradle for the mind. As he sits motionless within the dark stone room, Kayinich surrenders himself entirely to this atmosphere of profound, heavy stillness, allowing his thoughts to become as quiet and stationary as the ancient limestone monuments that surround him, perfectly at ease within the grand protective design of the night. The gradual deepening of the pre-dawn hours brings an absolute majestic solemnity to the high stone sanctuary as the brilliant silver path of Chak-Ek slowly slips below the western horizon line, leaving the stars of the constellation of the Peccary to dominate the upper void. Kayinich carefully closes the long folds of the amatl bark paper manuscript, the heavy, plaster-coated sheets folding back into their accordion structure with a crisp, dry whisper that sounds like old leaves sliding across a forest floor. He lifts his tall body from the woven palm leaf mat with absolute unhurried slowness, his knees making a faint popping sound that echoes softly within the vaulted limestone ceiling of the inner chamber. Every single physical movement is performed with a deeply ingrained reverence, a rhythmic, steady cadence that has been perfected across 5 decades of night vigils atop this colossal astronomical monument. He walks slowly toward the eastern stone portal, his bare feet sliding across the cool, smooth surface of the masonry flags, feeling the faint, microscopic textures of the crushed seashells that were mixed into the lime mortar by the ancient builders centuries ago. As he reaches the open window slit, he rests his hands flat against the thick, damp stone frame, letting his gaze wander across the vast, undulating ocean of dark green canopy that stretches out into the invisible lowlands of the Usumacinta River Valley. The sheer, immense scale of the geography matches the grand proportions of his mathematical calculations, providing an overwhelming sense of structural safety and existential comfort that wraps around his mind like a warm garment. In the profound philosophy of the forest sages, this specific transition period, when the primary planets have set and the sun has not yet broken through the morning, mists is the most sacred moment of absolute potentiality, a quiet gap between creation cycles where the human spirit can experience complete, undisturbed oneness with the cosmic design. The cool night wind continues to drift through the high aperture, carrying the deep, to some clean scent of the mountain rainforest directly into the small room, a natural incense that clarifies his breathing and invites his heart to maintain its slow, tranquil rhythm. He stands motionless in the darkness, a solitary guardian of time, whose mind is perfectly anchored to the permanent laws of the stars, entirely free from the transient worries of the mortal world, allowing his consciousness to rest securely within the grand protective embrace of the ancient architecture. The complete disappearance of Chak-Ek beneath the edge of the western hills leaves the sky in a state of deep, velvety darkness, a profound indigo void where the secondary constellations of the Maya zodiac shine with an extraordinary, crisp clarity. Kayinich remains standing at the eastern limestone window slit, his hands resting lightly upon the damp masonry frame, as he turns his eyes upward to trace the slow, majestic passage of the great celestial peccary and the cosmic turtle that map out the highway of the stars. To the ancient scholars of Lakamha, these star groupings are not random clusters of light, but are the permanent, glowing houses of the first ancestors, cosmic structures that were placed in the heavens during the initial creation of the universe to serve as unyielding signposts for human intelligence. The absolute reliability with which these constellations rise, traverse the zenith, and decline into the underworld provides an immense deep fountain of psychological safety to the aging priest, for it demonstrates that the celestial framework remains completely untouched by the small, erratic conflicts of the mortal kings down on earth. Every star is exactly where it has travelled for thousands of winters, maintaining its precise, mathematical trajectory with a quiet, indifferent perfection that commands the ultimate reverence from the human soul. The wind that rises from the deep mountain passes of the Chiapas highlands grows noticeably stronger, rushing through the narrow stone apertures of the tower with a low, musical whistling sound that resembles the soft, breathy notes of a traditional clay flute being played at a great distance. This natural melody combines beautifully with the endless, undying hum of the tree frogs and crickets down in the forest, creating a dense, rich auditory landscape that fills the small sanctuary with an overwhelming sense of ancient comfort and total isolation from the outside world. K. Inich inhales the cool, invigorating mountain air deeply, letting the crisp, moisture-laden oxygen fill his lungs and dissolve the final remnants of mental fatigue from his brain, leaving his consciousness completely clear, stationary, and at peace. He stands as a living bridge between the ancient sheets and stones beneath his feet and the infinite stars above his head, his heart beating in perfect, effortless synchronization with the slow, majestic respiration of the sleeping wilderness, fully surrendered to the comforting, protective custody of the pre-dawn night. The heavy, velvety indigo of the pre-dawn sky begins to show the most subtle, imperceptible transformation along the absolute furthest margins of the eastern horizon, where the mountain peaks of the Chiapas range meet the infinite sky. K. Inich watches this delicate shift with a calm, deeply professional eye, recognizing that the deep blackness is slowly softening into a faint, smoky charcoal grey, the very first indication that the solar deity is preparing to ascend from its long, perilous journey through the watery chambers of the underworld. This transitional phase, known to the high priests of Palenque as the birth of the twilight, is a period of supreme spiritual cleanings, a moment when the heavy night air reaches its maximum density and absolute crispness before the heat of the day returns to the valley, and the wind blowing through the limestone slits of El Caracol drops its low, whistling pitch and becomes a steady, cool sigh, carrying a fresh wave of moisture from the cascading waterfalls of the Otilum River that rush past the temple, foundations far below. The rich scent of wet limestone plaster, cold mountain earth, and the unique, sweet aroma of green jungle foliage being washed by the early dew fills the circular sanctuary, acting as a natural restorative that clarifies the priestess breathing and sharpens his internal focus. He rests his elbows against the smooth, worn surface of the eastern viewing shelf, interlacing his long, thin fingers together and letting the absolute stillness of the stone masonry anchor his physical presence to the earth. Down in the massive ceremonial plazas of La Camha, the grand white stuccoed pyramids and palaces remain completely submerged in a thick, ghostly sea of low-moving river mist, their sharp architectural lines blurred by the vapour, making the entire stone city look like a collection of sacred islands floating in a mythical primeval lake. This beautiful, slow-motion vision provides an extraordinary sense of psychological peace to the aging astronomer, a comforting visual confirmation that his city is waking up in exactly the same serene, orderly fashion that it has for hundreds of continuous years, completely sheltered by the mathematical vigilance of its scholars. Every muscle in his shoulders and lower back relaxes completely as he leans into the structural support of the ancient window frame, letting his consciousness drift on the surface of this magnificent, silent sea of mist, entirely free from the frantic anxieties of modern linear time, perfectly balanced at the edge of a new creation cycle. The smoky charcoal grey along the sharp ridges of the eastern mountains continues its slow, majestic expansion, subtly shifting into a pale, translucent silver that begins to outline the true geometry of the sleeping city below. From his hat-go-hat vantage point within the circular tower, K-Inich observes the low-lying river mist as it responds to the changing light, its thick white tendrils curling and drifting around the base of the great palace like silent, phantom rivers navigating an architectural labyrinth. This specific hour of the morning brings a noticeable change to the dense wall of sound, rising from the surrounding rainforest canopy as the deep, continuous hum of the nocturnal tree crickets and rain frogs begins to taper off, their voices gradually yielding to the early tentative notes of the diurnal birds. A solitary clay-coloured thrush releases a soft, clear whistling note from the upper branches of a nearby mahogany tree, its musical cadence echoing through the cool, damp air like a solitary bell being struck inside an empty courtyard. This gentle auditory transition serves as a beautiful, comforting confirmation of the absolute reliability of nature's laws, proving that the boundary between night and day is maintained by an unwavering, divine intelligence that requires no human effort to function. The sun priest lets his head rest lightly against the vertical stone frame of the window aperture, feeling the crisp, moisture-laden morning breeze brush across his forehead, lifting the lingering warmth of his nightly mathematical labours and replacing it with a profound sense of physical rejuvenation. The clean mineral aroma of the dew-drenched limestone combines with the sharp, green scent of crushed ferns and wet moss, forming a restorative olfactory atmosphere that encourages his respiration to remain deep, slow, and beautifully unhurried. In this quiet interval of absolute peace, the entire kingdom of Palenque appears to be suspended between two vast realities, safe within the protective custody of the ancient stones and the predictable pathways of the stars, allowing the scholar's mind to release all analytical tension and settle into a state of complete, untroubled emotional rest. The translucent silver along the eastern sky begins to catch the most delicate, thin veins of a soft, pale amber, a warm hue that slowly spreads across the belly of the clouds like liquid gold, expanding over a sheet of raw silk. K-Inich watches this beautiful colour transformation with a deep, silent gratitude, knowing that the mathematical coordinates he verified during the midnight hours have just been physically realised by the exact arrival of the twilight at its predicted station. This magnificent dawn is the ultimate reward for the sun priestess' long, exhausting vigil, a direct and visual proof that his calculations were completely flawless, and that the cosmic order remains entirely unbroken. Down in the valley, the heavy sea of river mist begins to glow with a soft internal illumination, transforming the grand plazas of Palenque into a radiant, shimmering field of white light that reflects the awakening glory of the heavens. The morning birds are now fully awake within the thick canopy of cedar and palm trees, their independent songs blending together into a joyous, chaotic morning symphony that replaces the steady drone of the night crickets with a vibrant celebration of the new day. A flock of wild parrots takes flight from the upper branches of a massive ceiba tree, their bright green bodies cutting through the silver air like scattered emeralds as their loud, energetic cries echo across the limestone steps of the Temple of the Inscriptions. This sudden explosion of life and colour does not disturb the deep philosophical calm within K-Inich's mind but instead infuses his body with a profound sense of physical renewal and spiritual satisfaction, confirming that life is returning to his kingdom in perfect accordance with the ancient prophecies. The cool mountain breeze continues to flow through the circular sanctuary, carrying the sweet, heavy scent of vegetated earth, blooming forest lianas, and the fresh, clean exhalations of millions of dew-soaked leaves. Every ounce of physical fatigue melts away from his long limbs as he stands before the changing light, his heart beating in an effortless, unhurried rhythm that is perfectly attuned to the majestic, turning wheels of the Maya universe. The pale amber veins along the eastern peaks begin to deepen into a rich, magnificent saffron orange, casting a warm, golden radiance across the upper cornices and roof combs of the highest temples in Palenque. Inich watches this glorious light touch the absolute summit of the Temple of the Cross, its intricate stone carvings glowing like heated embers against the cool indigo that still lingers in the western half of the sky. This spectacular division of the day, where the eastern world is actively burning, Vekep ite hat new life while the west remains, anchored in the quiet shadow of the past, is a visual manifestation of the grand dualistic philosophy that guides every aspect of Maya thought. The sun priest takes a step back from the open limestone ledge, his bare feet moving silently across the smooth masonry flags as he prepares to return his astronomical instruments to their sacred resting places. He carefully lifts the heavy cedar chest lid, the aromatic wood releasing a fresh, comforting wave of resinous scent that mixes beautifully with the crisp morning air circulating through the tower. With hands that maintain the flawless, steady precision of a lifelong scholar, he places the computational tablet, the dried maize kernels, and the smooth cacao reeds back into their velvet-lined compartments, ensuring that every tool is perfectly arranged for the next astronomer who will ascend this tower. This act of orderly containment brings an immense feeling of personal closure and intellectual satisfaction to his mind, marking the successful completion of a sacred duty that has preserved the temporal security of his entire civilization for another critical day. The heavy hum of the jungle birds has now reached its full joyous crescendo, a magnificent wall of organic sound that vibrates through the thick limestone walls of El Caracol, like a natural hymn of thanksgiving for the return of the solar lord. Inich breathes in the rich, complex aroma of the awakening forest, a mixture of sweet tree sap, damp lime mortar, and the invigorating crispness of the early morning dew, feeling his entire nervous system settle into a state of profound, immovable peace as the physical world transitions into the bright clarity of the new day. The rich saffron orange along the eastern horizon rapidly intensifies into a brilliant fiery coral pink, bleeding outward across the massive cloud banks and completely dissolving the remaining pockets of deep indigo that had held the sky for so many hours. Inich watches this breathtaking illumination sweep over the valley like a wave of pure liquid light, finally striking the majestic 5-story tower of the great palace and making its white plaster walls glisten with the soft radiance of a giant polished pearl. The heavy blanket of white river mist that had filled the central plazas begins to warm and thin under this golden touch, breaking apart into small, lazy clouds of vapor that drift upward through the courtyard columns, like the smoke from 1,000 sacred braziers. This beautiful clearing of the landscape reveals the first signs of human activity down within the city as the early morning caretakers, temple servants, and minor scribes emerge onto the limestone staircases, their white cotton robes appearing as tiny, moving points of light against the dark stone background. The sunrise orchestra of the jungle has now reached its absolute peak, with the deep, booming calls of the distant black howler monkeys rolling across the forested ridges like a soft, organic thunder that signals the definitive end of the night realm. This powerful primeval sound brings a wave of intense physical and emotional security to the sun priest, an absolute confirmation that the natural balance of the earth has been fully maintained, and that the morning has arrived exactly as the ancient mathematical tables predicted. Kainik rests his palms flat against the exterior limestone balcony rail, feeling the stone beginning to absorb the very first traces of the sun's warmth, a gentle thermal contrast that sends a comforting sensation of vitality through his long fingers and forearms. He inhales the crisp, sweet morning air deeply, letting the rich scents of damp earth, crushed cedar leaves, and rising river vapor wash through his senses, leaving his mind completely clear, unhurried, and filled with a profound, immovable peace as his long midnight vigil draws to its natural and triumphant close. The fiery coral pink of the sky explodes into a magnificent, blinding flash of pure molten gold as the upper margin of the solar lord, Ka'inichajah, finally breaks over the absolute highest peak of the eastern mountain range. This initial ray of direct sunlight travels across the immense green valley of Palenque with a silent, terrifying speed, striking the elevated circular tower of El Caracol and bathing the ancient stone room in a wave of deep, liquid warmth that instantly dispels the lingering mountain chill. Ka'inich closes his eyes for a brief, reverent moment as the golden light touches his weathered face, feeling the intense, life-giving heat penetrate his skin and send a wave of profound physical revitalization through his tired muscles and aching joints. This specific moment of the first solar contact is the ultimate validation of the priestess sacred architecture, for the beam of light enters the eastern window aperture at an absolute, unyielding geometric angle that has been calibrated by generations of master builders to prove the mathematical perfection of the calendar. Down in the heart of Lacumha, the great city is now completely bathed in this brilliant golden morning fire. Its immense plaster pyramids, elevated aqueducts, and wide residential courtyards shedding the last of their ghostly river mists and standing forth with an astonishing, sharp clarity. The noise of the thousands of awakening citizens rises from the lower plazas like a soft musical hum, blending perfectly with the majestic morning chorus of the toucans, parrots, and howler monkeys that continues to echo through the dense rainforest canopy. This harmonious union of the human and natural worlds brings an overwhelming feeling of existential peace and psychological completion to the aging scholar, knowing that his long, solitary midnight labor has successfully secured the cosmic protection and economic stability of his people for another day. He opens his arms slightly to receive the full warmth of the rising sun, his respiration slowing to an effortless, deep rhythm that matches the slow, magnificent breathing of the earth as it enters the bright, confident realm of the new day. The direct golden rays of Ka'inich-Ajor grow rapidly stronger, casting long, sharp shadows from the decorative roof combs of the palaces across the vast limestone plazas of Palenque. Ka'inich stands within the warm embrace of this brilliant morning light, watching his city come to full, vibrant life as the great marketplace begins to fill with the colourful movement of people. Arriving from the outlying agricultural valleys, women carrying woven baskets filled vikepwi to hat fresh maize, dark green avocados, and bundles of sweet wild herbs move through the stone courtyards, their bright cotton dresses forming a moving mosaic of colours against the clean white plaster background. the sun priest looks out over this bustling human landscape with a profound, quiet pride, understanding that the peaceful commerce and daily co-security of these thousands of families are the direct, beautiful fruits of his silent astronomical labours. Every single contract signed by the merchants, every boundary line drawn by the farmers, and every decree issued by the royal court is safely anchored to the absolute mathematical certainty of the calendar. System he preserves. This grand realization fills his heart with an immense grounding weight of tranquility, transforming his physical fatigue into a deep, satisfying sense of spiritual accomplishment that settles into his bones like a warm, comforting blanket. The cool morning air continues to drift around the elevated circular tower, now carrying the rich, domestic aromas of roasting maize, fresh pine wood smoke, and the sweet, resinous scent of copal being burned on the lower temple altars. Inich lets his hands rest lightly upon the smooth limestone balustrade, feeling the ancient stone building actively warming under the rising sun, a solid monument of human intelligence that will continue to stand true against the darkness for centuries to come. His mind feels completely clear, unhurried, and perfectly at ease within this grand protective order of the universe, allowing his consciousness to float peacefully upon the joyful morning sounds of his awakening civilization. The intense golden light of the early morning sun continues its steady vertical ascent, shrinking the long architectural shadows and bringing a crisp, brilliant clarity to every carved detail of the sprawling metropolis below. From the elevated eastern portal of El Caracol, Inich observes the arrival of the elite nobility and royal officials as they emerge into the grand courtyard of the great palace. Their magnificent headdresses of iridescent quetzal feathers, catching the light and flashing like green fire against the white stucco walls. The daily life of Palenque is now moving with a full, confident momentum, guided entirely by the precise mathematical declarations that the sun priest will soon deliver to the royal court, his high sanctuary. This flawless transition from the mysterious shadow world of the night to the structured, predictable reality of the day provides an incredible sense of psychological stability and personal comfort to the aging astronomer, confirming that the universe is functioning exactly as it was designed to by the first ancestors. The air within the circular tower has become pleasantly warm and beautifully clear, completely free from the heavy moisture of the pre-dawn mists, and filled instead with the active, energetic vibrations of a city at the height of its historical prosperity. The complex, rich aroma of the awakening valley rises through the stone openings, a unique mixture of damp earth, sweet forest blossoms, burning cedar firewood, and the clean mineral scent of sun-baked lime plaster. Inich slowly lowers his arms and allows his physical framework to settle into a state of absolute, motionless relaxation against the stone interior bench, letting his pulse slow down to match the deep, unhurried rhythm of the turning earth. Every single analytical doubt has been dissolved by the triumphant arrival of the light, leaving his mind completely safe, secure, and at peace within the permanent, unchanging laws of the cosmos that he has spent his entire life studying and preserving. The morning sun climbs higher into the wide, brilliant expanse of the blue sky, casting an absolute clarity across the entire valley of La Camha, and warming the thick stone walls of the observatory until they radiate a comforting, deep heat. Inich watches from his high stone terrace as the grand processions of temple priests and musicians begin to assemble along the massive staircases of the Temple of the Inscriptions, their long trumpet blasts echoing softly across the plaza like the distant calling of great forest birds. This beautiful, predictable sequence of ritual and daily labor brings an overwhelming sense of emotional resolution to the sun priest, marking the definitive completion of his long overnight journey through the mathematical structure of the universe. The vast city below him is now fully energized, its markets bustling with thousands of voices, its construction sites echoing with the steady rhythm of wooden mallets against limestone, and its schools filling with the soft recitations of young scribes, learning the ancient glyphs. All of this vibrant, creative human life is operating in perfect, unconscious harmony with the grand cycles of the stars that K-Inich verified during the silent midnight watches, safe under the protective custody of the absolute calendar. The breeze that circulates through the tower has become warm and light, losing the sharp moisture of the mountain night and carrying instead the rich, sweet scent of roasting cacao beans, fresh pine needles, and the clean, comforting aroma of sun-dried cotton garments from the residential courtyards. The aging astronomer lets his back rest deeply against the curved interior wall of the sanctuary, his hands relaxed completely upon his knees as he experiences a profound, total release of all physical and mental tension. The numbers have stood firm, the planets have maintained their tracks, and the morning has arrived with absolute, unyielding precision, leaving his mind completely anchored within a permanent harbour of cosmic logic, entirely at peace with the turning of the centuries. The glorious solar disk of K-Inich Ajor now sits fully established above the sharp mountain peaks, flooding the entire world of Palenque with a brilliant, unwavering daylight that completely conquers the last remnants of the night realm. K-Inich stands in the centre of the circular chamber of El Caracol, his tall silhouette bathed in a golden, luminous aura that highlights the profound peace etched into the deep lines of his face. His long nightly vigil has reached its absolute, triumphant conclusion, and the mathematical framework of the universe has once again been proven to be perfectly secure, stable, and completely reliable. With a final slow movement of deep reverence, the sun priest steps out onto the open stone platform of the high terrace, looking down upon the magnificent white city of La Camha as it operates verkep ite, at absolute confidence under the protective custody of the sacred calendar. The vibrant sounds of the bustling marketplace, the distant chanting of the temple choirs, and the majestic morning chorus of the rainforest blend together into a single, beautiful symphony of life that rises through the warm air to greet him. This grand, historical landscape provides an incredible sense of psychological comfort and existential resolution to his mind, a final proof that his lifeless dedication to the logic of the stars has successfully preserved the peace of his civilization for the generations to come. The warm morning breeze sweeps across the Gerhat balcony, carrying the rich, sweet scent of burning copal resin, fresh maize and sun-baked limestone directly into his senses, wrapping his consciousness in a thick blanket of total security. K-Inich lets his breath expand into a slow, effortless cadence that matches the steady, unhurried respiration of the ancient earth below, feeling every single ounce of physical and mental tension dissolve completely into the bright, clear reality of the day. The numbers have stood true, the pathways of the planets remain unbroken, and the grand architecture of time continues its magnificent, predictable journey through the infinite ages, leaving his soul in a state of absolute, everlasting rest. This is a work of creative historical narrative constructed solely for entertainment, relaxation, and educational purposes. While rooted in verified archives, certain scenes and atmospheres have been textually reimagined to provide an immersive auditory experience. This content was developed with the assistance of advanced AI tools and has been meticulously reviewed, verified, and edited by the editorial team at Whispers of Centuries. All rights reserved. Until next time, listen closely to the whispers of the past, because you never know what timeless wisdom might quietly find its way into your night.